Okay, greetings one and all, and welcome to this math video. In this math lesson, we will be considering the topic rounding. Yes, rounding. Let's begin. Okay, the question says the following. A whole number n is rounded off to one significant figure to give 400. Write down the smallest whole number that n could be. Now, the answer to this question is definitely going to be 350. And we know that 350 is the answer because if we look at 350 and we round it off to one significant figure, well, we know that 3 is the first significant figure of this number. And so we circle 3 and we underline 5. And if we look at 5, which is to the right of 3, 5, once the number is 5 or greater, then we round up, we add 1. So indeed, the number to the right of 3 is equal to 5, so it's 5 or greater. And so when we have to add 1 to the 3, and if we add 1 to the 3, we get 400. So that means that if we take 350 and we round it off to one significant figure, we do get 400. Now the question is, someone may be saying, how do we know that this is the lowest? How do we know that this is the smallest whole number such that when we round it off to one significant figure, we get 400? Well, let's go one step lower. If when we go one step lower and we round off to one significant figure and we get 400, then that means that 350 is not the lowest. But if when we go one step lower than 350 and we get a number that is, and we get a number such that when we round it off to one significant figure, we do not get 400, then that means that 350 is the smallest. Let me say it again. We are claiming that 350 is the smallest whole number such that when we round it off to one significant figure, we get 400. If that is the case, if we were to go one step lower, right, and find another whole number that when we round it off to 300, that when we round it off to one significant figure, we do get 400, that means that 350 would not be the lowest because there's another one that is smaller than 350 that when we round it off to one significant figure, we get 400. But if when we go one step lower, we round it off, we round off that number to one significant figure, and we get a number that when we round it off to one significant figure, it is not equal to 400, then that means that 350 is indeed the lowest. And so let's go one step lower, and one step lower than 350 is exactly 349. 3 is the first significant figure of this number, and 4, well, 4 is less than 5. So since 4 is less than 5, that means we do not round up. We keep the 3 as is, and we turn the 4 and the 9 into zeros. And so that means that 349 rounded off to one significant figure is 300 and not 400. So that means that 350 is the smallest whole number, such that when we round it off to one significant figure, we get 400. Okay, let's move on to the next question. It says write down the largest whole number n. Write down the largest whole number that n could be. Remember, there is a bunch of whole numbers that when you round it off to one significant figures, there is a lot of whole numbers that when you round it off to one significant figure, you get 400. But the question is, out of all those numbers, which one of them is going to be the biggest number, right? What is the biggest number such that when I round off that whole number, it has to be whole number 2. What is the biggest whole number that I could round off to one significant figure and still get 400, right? Mind you, there's a lot of numbers that do it, but which whole number is the biggest one out of that set of numbers? And so the answer is 449. And the reason why it's 449 is because if we were to round off 449 to one significant figure, well, we can circle 4 as the first significant figure, and we look to the right of 4, which is going to be another 4. Well, 4 is less than 5, so that means that it's going to turn into 0. And we round down, so the 9 turns into 0 as well, and the 4 remains the same. And so we have 400. So 449 is, when we round it off to one significant figure, is indeed 400. Now the question is, are we able to find a number bigger than 449, a whole number that is bigger than 449, yet when we round it off to one significant figure, we still get 400? If that is the case, that means that 449 is not the biggest whole number that does this. But if when we increase the number, if when we go one step higher, we find a number that when we round it off to one significant figure is not 400, then that means that indeed 449 is indeed the correct answer. Okay, so let's look at the number that is one step higher than 449, which is 450. We circle 4 because that's the first significant figure, and we underline 5. That's the number to the right of it. We know that once it's 5 or greater, we add 1. And so if we add 1 to 4, it's going to be 500. The 5 turns into 0. If we add 1 to 4, it's going to be 5. The 5 turns to 0. The 0 remains the same, so the answer is going to be 500. Okay, so that means that when we round off 450 to one significant figure, we get 500 and not 400, which means that 449 is definitely the largest one, the biggest one that n could be. Because if we go bigger, we end up finding a number that when we round it off to one significant figure, it does not equal the 400. Okay, let's move on to another question. It says, write 856.97 correct to the nearest whole number, right? 856.97 correct to the nearest whole number. So we have 856.97, and what we're going to do is we're going to circle 6, because when they ask us to write it correct to the nearest whole number, they're basically asking us to write it correct to, they're basically asking us to round to the nearest ones. And so we know that 6 is in the ones place. We underline the number that's to the right of 6. Well, the number that's to the right of 6 is definitely 9. So that means we're going to round up because 9 is greater than 5. And so we round up. So we adding 1 to 6, and 6 plus 1 is definitely 7. So we have 857. The numbers at the back does not matter. We don't write them down because we don't want any decimal part, just the whole number. Next, they ask us to write this number correct to one significant figure. Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant figures in this number. Notice that a significant figure, notice that if a number is non-zero, that means if it's not 0, so in this case, a digit, if we have a digit that is non-zero, then it's significant. So 8 is not 0, so it's significant. 5 is not 0, it's significant. 6 is not 0, so it's significant. 9 is not 0, so it is significant. And 7 is not 0, so it is significant. All non-zero digits, all digits that are not 0 are significant. So here we have 5 significant figures, but the first significant figure is going to be 8. So we circle that, and then we're gonna underline 5. Notice that if it's 5 or greater, we round up. So that means we're gonna add 1. 8 plus 1 is definitely 9. And 5 turned into 0, 6 turned into 0. We do not consider the decimal part. And so it's gonna be 900, right? 900. Now we have to write 856.97 correct to one decimal place, which basically means we have to round this to the nearest tenth. So we have to circle 9. 9 is the first number, right? To the right after the decimal point. And so 9 is definitely in the 10th place. And so we underline 7, and we see that 7 is greater than 5, so that means we have to add 1. So 9 plus 1, well, 9 plus 1 is definitely 10. And so we put the 0 at the back, and we add the 1 to 6. And so that means that this is going to be 7. And so it's going to be 857.0. All right. Again, because 7 is greater than 5, we have to add 1 to the 9. And if we add 1 to 9, 9 plus 1 is going to be 10. So we put the 0 at the back, and then we add that 1 to the 6. And so it's going to be 6 plus 1, which is going to be 7. So it's 857.0. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We have write 5 to 9.94 correct to one decimal place. So we have 5 to 9.94 correct to one decimal place. What we have to do is we have to circle the 9 because they're basically asking us to round to the nearest tenths. So 9. 9 is the first number to the right of the decimal. So we have the circle 9, we have the underlying 4. Please note that 4 is less than 5, so we do not round up. So we'll just be left with 5 to 9.9. We do not include the 4 because that'll be 2 decimal places. At the back, we don't want that. We just want 1 decimal place. B says round to the nearest whole number. So they're basically asking us to round to the nearest one. So we got to circle 9. All right, we circle 9. And we have to underline the number at the back of it, which is going to be 9. And so we know that 9 is greater than 5. And so that means we can add 1. And so that means that 9 plus 1 is going to be what? 10. And so since 9 plus 1 is 10, what we're going to do, we're going to put the 0 here in the ones place. Then we're going to add 1 to the 3. And so we're going to add 1 to the 2. And so 2 plus 1 is going to be 3. And so that's why we have 3 here. So it's 530. Let me say that again. So again, we circle 9, we underline the other 9. 9 is greater than 5, so this becomes, so we round up, so this becomes plus 1. We know that 9 plus 1 is definitely 10, so we put the 0 down in the ones place. And then we put the 1, right, the 1 on top of the 2. So now the 1, right, is going to be 2 plus 1. And 2 plus 1 is going to be 3. And so we have 530. We do not include the decimal part. No decimals because we're trying to round it to a whole number. So 530 is definitely a whole number. Moving right along, we have write 739.96 correct to the nearest whole number, so no decimals at all. The first thing that we have to do is we have to circle the 9. The 9 is in the ones place because remember when they're asking us to write it correct to the nearest whole number, they're basically asking us to round to the nearest ones. 9 is in the ones place. We look at the number that is to the right of our circle, which is going to be 9 again. We know that 9 is greater than 5, so we got to add 1. Did I have it? Yes. We have to add 1 to the 9. And if we add 1 to the 9, well, that's going to be 10. So we put the 0 in the ones place. And then we're going to add 1 to the 3, which becomes 4. And so we have 740. No decimal part. We don't have no decimals. And so we just drop them. Now they want us to round this number 739.96 correct to one significant figure. There are 5 significant figures here, 7, 3, 9, 9, and 9. All of them are significant because once it's not 0, it's significant. So all non-zero digits are significant. And so, but the first significant number here is going to be 0. And sorry, the first significant number here is going to be 7. So we circle 7, and then we underline 3 because 3 is to the right of 7. The question is 3 less than 5 or greater than 5? Well, 3 is definitely less than 5, and so that means that we do not round up. So it remains as 7, but the rest of the numbers, the 3 and the 9 turns to 0, and we drop the decimal part. So it's going to be 700. Next, we want to write this number correct to one decimal place, which basically means that we have to circle the number that is in the 10th place, right? We have to circle the number that is in the 10th place. And so we have to look at the number on the side, which is 6. And we underline 6 because it's to the right of 9. And so we notice that 6 is greater than 5. So since 6 is greater than 5, that means that we have to add 1. We have to add 1 to 9. And 9 plus 1 is 10. Put the 0 down, put the 1 up, right? And so we have to add 1 again to 9, all right? And then 9 plus 1 is 10. So we put the 0 down again, and we put 1 again. So now this is going to be 3 plus 1, which is 4. So the answer is going to be 740.0, all right? Let me explain that once again. So notice that 9 plus 1 is 10. So we put the 0 down, right? Put the 0 down, put the 1 up. And then so we say, okay, well, 9 plus 1 again, right? Because we put the 0 here, and then we put the 1 up top. 9 plus 1 again is going to be, again, 10. So we put the 0 down, put the 1 up. So we say 3 plus 1. 3 plus 1 is going to be 4. So it's going to be 4 here. And so it's going to be 740. So it's going to be 740.0. Okay, and so that's how we get that answer. All right, so it's 740.0. Moving right along, we have this next one from 2010. It says 956.97. Again, 956.97 correct to the nearest 100. All right, so we have this number, 956.97, and we want to write it correct to the nearest 100. The number that is in the hundreds place is definitely 9. We circle 9, we underline the 5 because it's to the right of it. We definitely have to add 1. If we add 1, that becomes a 10, and so it becomes 1,000 because we put the 0 in the hundredths place. We put the 1 in the thousands place, so it becomes 1,000. We drop the 97 because that's the decimal part. Now we want to write it correct to two significant figures. This number has 5 significant figures. 9 is significant, 5 is significant, 6 is significant, 9 is significant, and 7 is significant because they're all non-zero. And so what we have to do is we have to consider the first two. Well, 9 is the first one, and then 5 is the second one. So we have to circle 5 and underline the 6. If we look at it, we have 6 is greater than 5. So that means we're going to add 1. And so that means we're going to have 5 plus 1. What is 5 plus 1? That's going to be 6. So 9, 6, 0. This 6 becomes a 0, and we drop the decimal part. So it's 960. Now what we have is we want this number correct to one decimal place. So what we're gonna do is that means basically round to the nearest tenths. So it means we have to circle 9, and we have to consider the number behind 9, which is 7. We know that 7 is greater than 5, so that means we have to add 1. 9 plus 1 is going to be 10. So we put the 0 in the 10th place, and we put the 1 in the ones place. So it's going to be 6 plus 1, which is going to give us 7. So we have 957.0. Okay, let's move on to the next question. It says write 0.7952 correct to A, the nearest whole number, B, 2 decimal places, or the 3 significant figures. Okay, let's begin. This right here is our number 0.7952. We have the circled 0 because when they're asking us correct to, whenever they're asking us correct to the nearest whole number, we're basically asking us to round to the nearest ones place. The 0 is in the ones place. The 7 is to the right of it, so we're gonna consider that. We know that 7 is greater than 5, so 7 plus 1. Sorry, 7 is greater than 5, so we know that means we have to add 1. And so we have 0 plus 1, and 0 plus 1 is just 1. And so the answer is definitely going to be 1 because we drop all of the decimal part and we just keep the 1. Now we want to round to 2 decimal places. We want to round to 2 decimal places. Well, 9 is in the hundredths place. That is the second decimal place, right? The second number to the right of the decimal point. We know that the number at the back of her, sorry, we know the number the number to the back of 9 is 5. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add 1 to 9. The reason why we add 1 is because once it's 5 or greater, we add 1. And so what that means is that this 9 becomes a 10, all right? And this becomes a 0, and then we add 1 to the 7, which becomes 8. And so that becomes 0.80. Remember, the 9 becomes a 0, and then we add that 1 because it's 9 plus 10. So it's 9 plus 1, and 9 plus 1 is 10. So the 9 becomes the 0, and then we add 1 to the 7, which becomes 8. So 0.80. We don't write the rest because we only want it to 2 decimal places. Now they say they want it to 3 significant figures. It's very important to note that let's look at some significant figures before I explain that answer. It's very important to note that leading zeros are not significant. So if you have zeros to the front, right, they are not significant. However, zeros that are in the middle of 2 non-zero digits are significant. So if you have a 0 that's in between, right, they are in between 2 significant figures, well, they are significant. And trailing zeros to the right of the decimal point are significant, all right? They have to be trailing zeros, and they have to be to the right of the decimal point in order for them to be significant. Here also explains it. All non-zero digits are always significant, right? Non-zero digits are always significant. So 5 is significant, 6 is significant. In fact, all of these are significant because 0 is in the middle of 2 significant figures, so it's significant. Trailing zeros are only significant if a decimal point is present. And so what we have to do here is we have to notice that this 0 at the front is not significant. So the first significant figure is 7. So that's going to be 1, 2, and 3. Let me repeat myself. This 0 is not significant, so we cannot count that. So we have to count the first one, which is 7, the second one, which is 9, and the third one, which is 5. We circle it and we underline it by using the number, we underline the number to the right. 2 is definitely less than 5, so we cannot round up. So it's just going to be 0.795, 0.795. We do not include the 2 because we only want 3 significant figures. And if we were to include the 2, it would have been 4. All right, let's move on to the next question. It says round 24.987 correct to 1 decimal place. When they ask us correct to 1 decimal place, what they're basically asking us for is we want it rounded, we want to round it to the nearest tenths. The number that's in the tenths place is 9. We have the circle 9 and underlying 8. All right. Please note that 8 is greater than 8 is greater than 5, so it means we have to add 1. 9 plus 1 is going to be what? 10. So we put the 0 down and we add the 1 to the 4. So that makes it 25.0. Rounding correct to 2 significant figures, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant figures. We only want it rounded to 2 significant figures. So we're going to use, we're going to circle 4, we're going to underline 9. And so we know that 9 is greater than, 5, so we're going to add 1. And so we have 4 plus 1, which is going to be 25. And so since we wanted the 2 significant figures, it's just going to be 25. Now we want to round to the nearest hundredths. And so this right here is ones, this is tens, this is tenths, this is hundredths, and this is thousandths. And so we want to round to the nearest hundredths. The number that is in the hundredths is 8. So we circle 8, we underline 7. And so what we're going to do, we're going to definitely add 1 to 8. So it's going to be 8 plus 1. And so we are left with 24.99. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.